True Story Media.
Meet the computer you can talk to. With Copilot on Windows, working, creating, and collaborating is as easy as talking. Got writer's block? Share your screen with Copilot Vision to help spark inspiration, and use Copilot Voice to have a conversation and brainstorm ideas. Or maybe you need some tech help. With Copilot Vision, Copilot sees what you see. Let Copilot talk you through step-by-step guidance so you can master new apps, games, and skills faster. Try now at windows.com/Copilot.
Before LaDonna, Tanya Fernandez, and even Frank Abagnale, there was Jane Whaley and the Word of Faith Fellowship. Word of Faith Fellowship is an ultra-conservative church, which many consider a cult, out of Western North Carolina, and they're best known for their screaming prayers and the accusations of physical abuse by some of their members. Today, we're going to go way back in the pretend archives to talk about new developments at the Word of Faith Fellowship. And it's been a long time since I've covered this story. And a big reason for that is that not a lot has been happening, at least not a lot that I'm aware of. Many of the former members who have spoken out against the church have moved on. I follow some of them on social media, and it's kind of cool to watch them rebuild their lives. And some have sadly passed away. I've produced almost 300 episodes of Pretend for almost 9 years now. And my Word of Faith Fellowship series is what started it all. So I know that many of my new listeners haven't gone back to listen to that season. And I just listened to it and forgot how good it was. Although I have to warn you that this was early on in my podcast career. And let's just say I hadn't found my podcast voice yet. It's a lot more sultry back then. I guess I was listening to a lot of Criminal and Phoebe Judge. So for those who need a refresher or are just joining us, let me introduce you to the characters. It'll make a lot more sense. First, we have Matthew Fenner, who is the victim at the center of the story. And in 2013, he claims that he was brutally assaulted by multiple leaders and members of the Word of Faith Fellowship. Then there's Jane Whaley. Jane Whaley is the 85-year-old founder and leader of the Word of Faith Fellowship. She is known as the prophet within the church, and she wields absolute authority over the lives of all of their members. Brooke Covington is one of the church's top leaders and Jane Whaley's apparent heir. Jane refers to Brooke as her adopted daughter, even though they are not biologically related. Brooke has been described as Jane's enforcer, and she was allegedly present during some of the abuse that was reported over the years. Then there's District Attorney Ted Bell. Ted Bell is the prosecutor who was supposed to bring Matthew's attackers to justice. But as you'll hear in this episode, this case has been anything but straightforward. The accused members of Word of Faith were initially charged in 2014 and went to trial in 2017. Then that trial ended in a mistrial after a jury foreman violated court rules by introducing his very own research during deliberation. So the judge threw out the case and ordered the trial to be retried immediately. But that retrial never happened. What you're about to hear are episodes 10 and 11 of my series titled The Prophet, which is season 3 of Pretend. But after this episode, I'm going to update you on what's happening right now, because after 8 years of waiting, Matthew Fenner is fed up and he is shaking up the case. So stick around to the end of the episode for a major development. All right, let's play the episode. Jane Whaley can't live forever. Brooke Covington just seems like the natural successor. But there's a problem with this theory. Brooke can't take over the Word of Faith Fellowship if she's sitting in jail. And you can tell that church leaders are worried. Here's audio from my visit earlier this summer.
Our adopted daughter.
Yes.
They took in all the rebel Cooper children. They made them who they are today, and now they're
going to put her in jail.
Now they're going to put her in jail.
And I'm probably stupid enough to probably do it again.
So why do they want to throw her in jail? Well, because Brooke Covington and 4 other church ministers were indicted by a grand jury on charges of assault and kidnapping of a teenage boy because he's gay.
Now, from Western North Carolina's news leader, this is News 13 at 5.
Photos have now been released for the 5 Word of Faith Fellowship church members indicted this week for allegedly assaulting a former member.
And that boy, well, he's 25 now. and his name is Matthew Fenner.
And one of them had his hands around his neck and was like squeezing him so tight. And at this point, I was like, this has got to stop. They're going to fucking kill him. This
is Danielle Cordes. She was there that night, and she says she saw the whole thing.
At that point, I was like, if they're going to kill someone, it's definitely going to be this time, because it was just nonstop punching him and beating him on the chest and like shoving him back and forth. And, you know, it's just like waves of prayer. And, you know, Brooke screaming at him and pulling the next person in to pray for him. And
we'll talk more about this alleged attack in the next episode. But today we're going to spend the next hour talking about how we got to this point. And we're going to explore how someone like you and me could get caught in a cult leader's web. Don't believe me? Trust me. It's the perfect con. I'm Javier Leyva, and this is Season 3, The Prophet. You've seen the news. Layoffs, layoffs, layoffs. AI. In this day and age, if you have not started embracing AI tools and really refining your skills, you are going to be left behind, especially if you are in the job market today. There's not a single industry that hasn't been impacted by AI. And today's episode sponsor is Udacity. Udacity is an online learning platform with courses in generative AI, agentic AI, Python, and much more. Don't be intimidated by the technology or those fancy words. This is a tool that you will use, trust me. You know, I've been taking AI courses myself, and I thought I knew what I was doing because I've been experimenting with a lot of these tools. But it turns out that, I was just scratching the surface. I know AI has transformed the way I work. When I first started this podcast, it would take me almost a week to transcribe word for word every interview that I conducted for an episode. Did you know that Udacity just launched a master's degree for AI? Yeah, for under $5,000, you could get a master's of science in AI. That's a fraction of the cost of a traditional degree program. So if you are in the job market right now, you should check out Udacity, because with these skills, recruiters and employers will take notice. The tech field is always evolving, and you should be too. You can try Udacity risk-free for 7 days. Head over to udacity.com/pretend and use promo code PRETEND for 40% off your order. Again, that's udacity.com/pretend for 40% off. And make sure you use my promo code PRETEND so they know I sent you. That's Udacity, udacity.com/pretend. The biggest question I get all the time is, how do people get sucked into a cult? Well, everyone says they would never fall for it. So how did Matthew and his family become one of them? Of all the people I've ever talked to, Matthew was able to break it down perfectly for me.
You know, at the time, my family, we were kind of going through a stressful time. We were faced kind of with financial difficulties. You know, my mom wasn't doing well in her marriage. I was kind of having a difficult time with like the whole coming out process and trying to find acceptance among my family and friends and community. Yeah, we were just kind of really down on our luck. At the time we got involved, we were just kind of looking for an answer or like an easy fix, I guess, for our problems. And, at the time, Word of Faith kind of was that, answer for us at the time.
To say that Matthew's family was going through a rough time is putting it lightly. Matthew came out to his mother, Linda, and that didn't go very well.
And I just remember looking at her thinking, okay, like, Mom, I need to talk to you about something. And I just said, I couldn't really get the words out. I just had to start out by saying, do you love me? And she would just say, yes. And I said, but do you love me? Do you really, really love me? And she was like, yes, Matthew, I love you. And then I think I asked that like 3 or 4, maybe 5 times. And then I think I couldn't get the words to come out, but she was just like, Matthew, are you gay? And then I just kind of looked at her and said, yeah, I think so. And then it was just kind of like a flip switch of just like, no, nah. She's like, no, that's not right. Why would you think that? You're not gay. So I was like, Mom, no. I was just kidding. Like, no. Like, a friend of mine and I at school, we had this bet we were going to see what we were going to just like go home and tell our moms that and see what they had to say and like just see how they would react. But I'm not really, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to see what you would say. And
then his biological father found out about his sexuality.
So I had to go to this therapist, and my dad, came with me on my first visit. And the first thing he says was, well, he does have these thoughts that he's gay and that he likes men. Like, is there anything you can do about it?
This sent Matthew into a deep depression. Then there were domestic issues between his mother and father that landed her in jail. To make matters worse, Linda's relationship with her new husband was falling apart. Here's Linda Rape describing that time in her life.
Our relationship was so terrible because he had lied to me so much and was sneaking and using money for drugs and stuff. And I pretty much lost everything. I mean, everything. Where I lived, I had to move in with my parents because the money that he was making, he was using it on drugs and stuff, and we had nothing. I mean, I couldn't pay my rent, I couldn't pay my car payment, I couldn't do anything.
All right, let's pause here for a second. This is how it all begins. Cults typically prey on you when you're at your most vulnerable. And it's around this time when Matthew and his family are at their lowest point. From this moment forward, they are willingly going to join a cult. They just don't know it yet. It happens really quickly. Let's just put it this way. It's around February at this point in the story. Matthew has heard about the Word of Faith Fellowship before, and he thinks they're weird. And by December of the same year, Matthew is so deep in the church, he's telling his grandmother that it's not okay to bake Christmas cookies because it's a pagan holiday. So, how does someone go from thinking that these people are freaks to suddenly become one of them? Just to give you an idea, this is Matthew Fenner, months later, speaking at graduation during his time at the Word of Faith Fellowship.
Well, I know I wasn't here my whole life. I wasn't raised here. I wasn't taught God the way that they're taught here. But as I came here to the Word of Faith, I began to see what God is in someone's life. I began to see who Jesus is. I began to see the love of God. I began to see the presence of God. And I wanted it. And I know I gave up my life. I left a public school and came here. I gave it all up. Why? Because I wanted to. Because I felt the presence of God here in this church. God has delivered me from so much. And I know that I have changed. Because you could lay before me anything of the world. You could lay before me the alcohol, music, cigarettes, unclean, a magazine, a famous person. I don't care. I don't want it. I know in my heart there's no desire for it. I know in my heart that coming here was the best thing for me because I know that my life is being directed by my choice. But lastly, I want to thank my mom, though, for standing with me for all the things that I've gone through. She stood. No matter what anyone said, my mom stood, and I'm so grateful that you brought me here, and you made sure I served God. And I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me. Thank you.
So how does he go from being one extreme to another? Let's break it down month by month. It's February 2010.
My family was like, all right, y'all, we're going to go to a church service. And so we're going to go over to this church called Word of Faith. And I was like, I've heard of that. But I was just kind of like, I don't think that's going to be what I'm not going to like it. I don't think I'm going to want to go there.
Matthew was far from the perfect candidate to become a Word of Faith Fellowship member. He's gay and considers himself an atheist.
So at the time, I really was like, church is not my thing. I don't believe in God.
He also heard rumors about some of their strange rituals.
The Word of Faith had a reputation as well of being this kind of scandalous kind of place that had a history of some really sketchy things kind of had gone on there that I had heard about.
Matthew thought they were weird, but at the same time, he was kind of curious. And all of a sudden, he has an invitation. I mean, I can imagine it's like being invited to the creepiest house in your neighborhood. It's scary, but you still want to see inside.
Like everyone always said you had to have an invitation to go. So it was like, well, we've got one, so I'm going, so let me go check this place out. So
wait a minute. That's interesting. I never would have thought about it that way. But like when you say sketchy stuff, obviously right now my listeners know what the sketchy stuff is. What kind of reputation did they have at the time? Because, I mean, right now, most people listening to my show probably wouldn't want to go, even if it's exclusive invitation only.
Yeah. So at the time, in my mind, like the reputation that I was aware of was, it wasn't like what you're hearing now. It was more, they make themselves throw up in buckets.
The word on the street was that the Word of Faith Fellowship members would scream for so long that they would make themselves vomit in a bucket. And they believed that puking was a way to get the demons out.
The extremes in my mind were, they do believe in like demonic possession. And then I think when I told someone at school that I was going to go there, they were like, that place is a cult. It was more just like, okay, well, they've got this reputation. I'm curious. Let me find out what's going on and let me just see.
During Matthew's first visit, he said he didn't witness anything sinister. For him, the whole thing was just kind of amusing.
Like for me, it was kind of comical as well. Like I thought it was funny. I was like, what is this? And because I remember my cousin and I like side-eyeing each other. We would kind of smirk and laugh and be like, what? I would like lean over and be like, what in the heck is this? What? These people are so weird. And I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. And then we'd sat there through the service and I remember thinking, God, this was so boring. So Jane preached. To me, it was just like, I think this is so silly. I do not believe what these people believe in. I had no intention of going back. I told my mom, I was like, you guys can go. That's cool. But I don't think I want to be here. Like this place seems kind of, it's just not my thing.
It's now sometime around April 2010. And it's been 2 months since Matthew's first visit to the church. Remember, he said he would never return. But his mother somehow suckered him into attending a Friday night potluck dinner at the church.
And then that night, though, was when something kind of like switched for me too.
During the potluck, Brooke Covington, Jane Whaley's second in command, took notice of Matthew and started talking with him.
She got my cell phone number from my grandmother. And so Brooke called me. She was like, I'm going to come pick you up. And like, I want to like spend some time with you and talk to you. Like you can come with me up to McDonald's and we'll just like sit up there and talk and whatnot. And so she came to my house and picked me up. We just sat in this McDonald's parking lot for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Basically just talked about my life. I told her right up front, I was like, I don't really think I believe in God. Like I don't believe in these types of things.
Brooke was there for Matthew when everyone else and everything around him was falling apart.
It wasn't so much I want to start going to church, but there was something about her. She seemed to have taken a genuine interest in me and like what I had to say and like the troubles I was having. And it was just nice because I felt like for the first time someone was actually listening to me.
At first, even the strange rules didn't bother Matthew. I mean, who is he to judge? His life is crumbling around him, and they seem to have everything figured out. Maybe he could use some structure in his life.
I would talk about me, and then, she would say, well, we do believe this, and, we don't listen to music, and we don't listen to the radio. We've learned that God's ways are the ways that we want to live, and we believe he speaks to us, and he's made it clear to us that, like, we shouldn't do these things because they separate us from God. It's like you begin to get this sense that maybe the way you're living isn't right. Here it is that you see all these people, outwardly have, these nice things. They all have these really nice houses. They all drive these really nice cars, and they have these really nice, expensive clothes. And all the women are wearing really expensive jewelry. And like everyone seems really happy and loving and like caring. And then, obviously there must be something to the way that they're living. Like if they have all this stuff, they say that, well, we live this way and God blesses us and gives us all this stuff. But, eventually later on you find out that like, no, it's all coerced. You're coerced into buying it, and like you're forced to live and dress a certain way. You're expected by the ministers and by Jane and by, these like higher up people. Like it's just, this is our code of conduct and you have to live this way. Like, at the time, it's like they make you feel like everything you're doing is so wrong. The reason things aren't going well in your life is because, you're not living how we live.
After sitting at the McDonald's parking lot for about an hour, Brooke offered to take Matthew to see her house.
I was like, oh, well, you want to come see my house? And so we drove and she took me to her house. And it's this huge, 4-story, really elaborate brick home. Inside it was immaculately decorated. And I just remember walking around seeing it thinking, oh, this is so nice. Like, I wish we could have these types of things. And so in my mind, it was just like, again, it was kind of like an overload of, ooh, okay, she's actually listening to me and cares about what I'm saying, to like all this stuff. Like there's just nice clothes, nice houses, nice all these things. So I'm just thinking, ooh, this place might be good for like actually having just nice stuff. You know, this lady's listening to me and like seems to care about what I'm saying. And so, you know, maybe we can give this a shot of like just seeing where it goes.
Matthew figured he had nothing to lose, so he starts attending more and more services. First, they get him to attend church. Now, it's time to pull Matthew in deeper. In order to truly indoctrinate him, they need to get Matthew out of public school and into the church's private school.
You know, some of the younger people were like, well, maybe you could come to school with us. Brooke, I think, had mentioned like we make the highest SAT scores in the county. And, you know, all our students make all A's and they get into really good schools. And like, you know, they go on to law school and medical school and all this thing. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, ooh, like she said, medical school, like that's what I want to do too. And they make good grades. Well, that means I can get into a good college. So, you know, and they're like, oh, we also do dual enrollment. So you can do college while you're in high school. And so again, all this to me is like, in my mind, it's just like setting off like all these fireworks.
Matthew is in. The old Matthew is dead.
And I remember at one time telling my mom, thinking, you know, I don't really believe in this God thing, but like I'll try. Like if it means that it's going to make you happy, and you know, I want you to accept me. I want you to like, you know, love me again, like fully. And I was like, I don't think I can change being gay, but I'll try not to act on it if that's what you want. If that's what these people do, like I'll just try not to act on this stuff. Like I can't make any promises, but I'm going to try just for you. And I kind of at the time knew that it meant I was probably going to have to leave my school, all this mess. You start kind of separating yourself from your friendships. And it's this slow kind of progression of getting in your mind of making, like they kind of trick you and make you think that, again, you need to do what they're doing to have the things that they have. And so you can feel happy.
It's August now and summer break is over. Matthew Fenner is now enrolled in the church's school. He pretty much cut out all his friends, he quit dance school, and he stopped listening to music.
That whole month of like June through August was like, all right, let's just get serious about this. Just cut stuff out. Just here we go. Let's just start to conform as much as you can to this place and just really kind of mold yourself to this place so you can finally get happy and, you know, see what you'll get out of this, and you know, who knows.
So just to get the timeline straight, you said February and now it's August, and all these things that you kind of let go from your life, like the dance, which was, it sounds like it was like a really big important thing in your life, and then your friends obviously are really close, and your school and all that. Were these things that they asked you to do, or things that you just knew you had to do?
So I think to some degree, it was things I kind of knew was expected of me. I just was like, okay, I'm going to go gung-ho and just do it. You know, let me quit dance. Like, I know I need to do this because I know this is not something they believe in. You shouldn't listen to music. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give up music and stop listening to it. You know, you shouldn't wear these types of things. I got rid of those clothes. And it was just kind of like I went through this radical kind of change.
Now it's December and Matthew and his family are 100% in. One day, while visiting his grandparents, he noticed that his grandmother was baking Christmas cookies.
Like she was making these cookies to take to like work, and we're like, you know, they say that's demonic, you know, it's pagan ritual and like it's not right and like you shouldn't do that. You know, that Brooke says this isn't okay. So you start getting this, your mentality eventually starts to change. Like you begin this like us versus them, like outsider versus word of faith people. Like you start to form that mindset of like that's how things are, and you kind of have this very rigid like who can be involved and who can't, and like you have to align yourself with the practices or you're out.
Remember, Matthew's grandparents have already left the church, and by now the church has taken over their family. They didn't know what to do, so on Christmas Day the grandparents asked Matthew and his family to leave. They moved into an apartment that they could not afford. And to make matters worse, Linda's husband, who was the family's only source of income, had enough with the church's overbearing rules. So he's out too. Now what? In Matthew's new rewired mind, there was only one person he needed to call: Brooke Covington. And within minutes, Brooke had a group of young men come, helped Matthew and his mom move into her house.
And I lived with Brooke from April 2012 until January 2013 when I escaped.
Matthew says he started witnessing horrible things.
You know, after that Christmas and then at the time, like I started seeing other things that just didn't set well with me. Like they had this practice, like the lower building that kind of picked back up around like the September, October time while I was in high school. And 2 of my classmates actually had to go, live down in the lower building.
The lower building, if you remember from season 1, was a place where former members say they experienced the most extreme form of punishment. They say Jane would hold young boys for months, even years against their will.
You can kind of tell, like you can sense things aren't right and they're off, but you kind of like ignore the red flags.
Then one day, Matthew says that he witnessed his friend being slapped in the middle of class.
That for me was like the turning point for me, like in the sense that like all the blinders went off and it was just like, no, this place isn't right. I can't keep up with this. This is not in their mind, God, this isn't right. And this is just not how you treat people. I loved the people there. And I mean, I can't say that all that was untrue. Like, I mean, I did love some of the people I made friends with. Like I did love and care for them. I could say I did love and care for Brooke, even though I knew she was doing all these wrong things. Just because people do bad things doesn't mean that they're like, you can't still love them as well. I mean,
and they took care of you during a time of need, right?
Yeah, not only me, like they took care of my mom, like.
But despite her reputation as a monster, Matthew says that he also witnessed the softer side of Brooke.
And she honestly treated me more like a son than she did. Like my brother and myself, she treated us more like sons than her actual own kids. And that's the one thing about Brooke. Like people do feel like she was a bully, and most people hate her that leave. And I understand why, because she was a bully, and that is the type of person she is. She is a bully, and she hurt a lot of people. And I mean, she hurt me and, that type of thing. But again, like I do personally believe that she was kind of in a similar position that I was. Like Jane got a hold of her, when she was at a downtime. She was probably maybe in her 20s, I think, if I remember correctly. She was down on her luck, and I think she just kind of got caught up in this thing and her mind got molded. And I just think she wasn't didn't have like a strong foundation in herself to like resist. I mean, I don't know. Eventually there's something that she's getting out of it, and she's gotten drawn into it. And again, I can't make excuses for the things that she's done, because she's done what she's done, and she's done really awful things to so many people. I don't want to be like this condemning person that's like, oh yeah, the whole time I was there, it was all bad. But I mean, because there were times there that I was there that it wasn't, bad. Like it wasn't bad. Like, I mean, they did take me on a vacation. They gave me a room. They did buy me stuff. They took me on these trips. They paid for like my graduation year. They paid for a trip to Brazil for me. And so, stuff like that, like I was very grateful for. They do this. There's always a cost to, a cost with receiving the things that you get, like your loyalty and your obedience and your submission to what they say is kind of what they expect in return for these things.
But one day, Brooke's motherly relationship with Matthew turned cold. Suddenly, she grew suspicious of his behavior and knew something was up.
Brooke was kind of like was retracting and like was not being as open about things, and like she could tell something was off with me. And so at one point she like pulled me into a room. I just remember her like me sitting there and just her looking at me saying like, we know that you're like up to no good, and you're making all these pacts with the devil, and something's off with you. Like I can tell, and like you're being really sneaky. And like she was just like, I can tell you're a snake. And like she told me that, and I couldn't help but I like started to smirk and was just like, I don't know. Like I just thought it was funny, but like I just remember her like everyone in that room kind of got real silent. Was just like, and after the fact, everyone told me like they thought you were gonna like that was gonna be it for you after that point. Like because they're like, you don't laugh at that kind of stuff and like get away with it. But for some reason I got away. It didn't happen right then, but it kind of was like a foreshadowing.
He got away with it this time, but soon after Sunday night church service, Matthew will feel Brooke's fury. This was a night that Matthew says that 20 church members beat him for more than 2 hours at Brooke Covington's direction. after the break, we are going to hear the second episode about Matthew Fenner's case. But first, a word from our sponsor. It's finally cold outside, we're making holiday plans, and this is the time of year that I just need my wardrobe to work, to look sharp, to feel good, and something that I'll actually reach for in the closet. Lately, my go-to wardrobe is from Quince. Quince has what I need, like Mongolian cashmere sweaters for about $50. Who knew I needed that? But it's $50. You normally would drop $200 or more for the same type of sweater. And wool coats that hold up to daily wear and still look pretty sharp. For me, the most important thing is it needs to fit. And their denim fits right and it feels good. Same as the pants and the chinos. The outerwears are solid. The down jackets, the wool, the leather coats. I could go on and on. But all of this cozy stuff is going to keep you warm in the cold. So here's the model that I could get behind, because Quince partners directly with trusted factories. They have high standards, real craftsmanship. Plus, they cut out the middleman and the markups. So you get premium quality about half the cost. And here's a quick personal note. The down jacket that I just picked up is getting me through this winter cold weather. It looks good, it keeps me warm, and it doesn't cost a fortune. As the holidays hit, that's the piece I keep reaching for. And yes, Quince has gifts covered beyond clothing too. They got home, bath, kitchen, and travel. So get your wardrobe sorted and your gift list handled with Quince. Don't wait. Go to quince.com/pretendpod for free shipping on your order and a 365-day return. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/pretendpod. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/pretendpod. At the Word of Faith Fellowship, deliverance is not something you ask for. You get it whether you like it or not. It's Sunday night after the evening service. It's cold outside, but inside the Word of Faith Fellowship sanctuary, the temperature is rising. Tonight, it's Matthew Fenner's turn to receive deliverance and release the devils controlling his homosexual desires. I'm Javier Leyva, and this is Season 3, The Prophet. Let's define gay as the Word of Faith Fellowship sees it. Let's say a man speaks to another man. Maybe he looks at him for too long or laughs at his joke. That could be considered gay. Maybe you're standing too close. It doesn't matter. If I'm a Word of Faith Fellowship member and I think you're gay, well, then you're gay. I don't have to prove it. I just know. And I can't let you suffer with those gay demons either. Oh no. I have to pray for you to get those gay spirits out of your body. And the way we pray at the Word of Faith Fellowship is through loud prayer. And it's not just me praying for you. Susie, Bobby, Roger, they're all going to join in. And pretty soon, you'll have 20 to 30 people screaming at you. And like Jane told me, people could get carried away. So it's easy to imagine that this prayer can become a little bit more than just a scream. I might hold on to your shoulders and give you a gentle tug. Then I might punch you in the chest, and maybe my hands will creep further up. And before I realize it, my fingers are wrapped around your neck. This hypothetical scenario that I just painted for you is exactly what Matthew Fenner says happened to him. Witnesses say Matthew was leaving prayer service one night when nearly 24 people surrounded him in the sanctuary. He said they slapped, punched, choked, and screamed at him for hours. He claims they did this to expel his homosexual demons.
Like sometimes there was, they called corporate prayer, where everyone would pray together. So that night was not one of those nights.
This is Danielle Cordes. She was there that night. The church members decided it was time to pray over Matthew Fenner's gay sins. Remember, this is after the evening service, not the happy-go-lucky ceremony I witnessed in the morning. The evening service is a little bit more intimate and damning. No visitors are allowed. And I've been told that Sunday night is a time when Jane and her ministers unleash their anger at the congregation. It's also during this time when older ministers can deal with younger members like Matthew for their sins.
One by one, they all started going over there. And then finally, Brooke yells to me across the sanctuary and's like, get over here and pray for Matthew.
Tonight's deliverance was led by Brooke Covington, Jane's so-called adopted daughter. Danielle says she was the one calling all the shots.
Brooke was the one there telling them the whole way, coaching them through it. And like the worst part is if we didn't do it and we didn't participate, which I didn't to the extent that they did. I never slapped him or did any of that. I had my arm on him. But if I had, I don't know, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I knew that if I didn't participate enough, that I was the next one in the chair. And no one wanted that, So, it's terrifying.
And people who know Brooke's style of worship say that she doesn't have time to deal with your devils. So when it's time to pray over you, it's gonna hurt. Brooke barks at Danielle and demands her to join in. Danielle was terrified.
They don't know how to talk to someone. They only scream at you. Are you gonna let his sin drive him out of here? Meaning drive him out of the church. And so I was like, oh no, because I didn't want him to leave because that would mean I'd never see him again. So I go over there and I have my hand on his back and we're praying. And it's getting really physical at this point. Like Sarah has her hands on him and is pushes him backwards to where the chair tips back. And then as soon as the chair tips back, because she's standing over him in front of him, yanks him back towards her. So at this point, Matthew's face is changing colors, he's white.
This wasn't a 10-minute prayer session. They say this lasted for hours. And Danielle says that Brooke was orchestrating the whole thing.
Brooke would someone who was tired in the center who had been praying for him. She would take them out of the center and bring another person in for the next one who had energy.
Danielle says that Brooke would just rotate people in to attack Matthew. It was nonstop. Danielle says that one guy had his arm wrapped around Matthew and was just beating him in his chest.
He was on Matthew's right side and he had his arm around Matthew and had his hand in a fist and was just beating his chest. And they kept on saying, you tell us what you did. And he was like, nothing, started crying. And so then Brooke at that point jerked him up by his arm and then shoved him down the aisle to where he had to catch himself. I didn't really feel like he could handle much more of this, but they just keep going at it. And, Brooke's like, I don't care if you have to stay in the sanctuary for 3 days. I don't care. You're going to stay in here till you tell your sin.
I can imagine what's going through Matthew's head. How do I get out of this? If I yell stop, will they actually stop? Can he run for the door? Well, that's not going to work either because the church has security at the entrance and the driveway out of the church's compound is just way too long.
Adam Bartley had his hands around his neck and was squeezing him so tight. And at this point, I was like, this has got to stop. They're going to fucking kill him. And I was like, what do I do? So I was like, well, whatever at this point, I'm just going to do it. And so I stuck my fingers under Adam's hand in between his neck and I peeled him off. And so he went to go forward to tell Brooke that I did that. And I was like, wait. I was like, he had surgery. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And I was like, whew.
Eventually, Danielle says that the beating suddenly stopped. Then, Brooke Covington walked up to Matthew in the foyer. Matthew was cornered by the 5 ministers charged with the crime. Brooke demanded from Matthew to confess his sins. He told her he had unclean dreams about a man and he hugged him in an ungodly way. Witnesses say that Brooke closed her fists and punched him with her ring, digging into his chest. Matthew gets up. They say Brooke then grabs Matthew by one shoulder and pushes him down and yells at him. "You're going back there and we're going to get this out of you," she says. They begin deliverance. Witnesses say that they grabbed him by the arm, pulled him, punched him in the chest, and Matthew is sitting crying, wondering how is he going to get out of this.
They went out like 2 or 3 times to the foyer area and tried to get him to tell whatever he was supposed to tell. And then Brooke was like, it's still not breaking. Let's pray for him again.
This scene lasted for 2 hours.
And I mean, I think I got home at like 2:45 a.m.
Matthew just starts thanking everyone for the deliverance. Anything to make them stop.
At that point, I was like, if they're going to kill someone, it's definitely going to be this time, because it was just nonstop. And, you know, punching him and beating him on the chest and like shoving him back and forth. And, you know, it's just like waves of prayer. And, you know, Brooke screaming at him and pulling the next person in to pray for him. And
it's important to note that Brooke Covington is in her late 50s, and the 4 other ministers charged with the crime were all in their mid-20s. 2 of the ministers charged lived with Brooke Covington. Their names were Sarah Anderson and Justin Covington. The other 2 ministers charged with attacking Matthew are Adam Bartley and Robert Walker.
You know, one thing led to the next, and then ultimately it led to me like escaping on the 29th of January.
This is Matthew Fenner.
And going to my grandparents' home, and then, you know, living there, and that kind of started a whole new chapter, I guess, in my life.
The next morning, his mom, Linda, and another church member showed up at Matthew's grandfather's house.
That night after I left, and just kind of barged in, and we're just like, what are you doing? Why are you here? It just became this whole like yelling thing. Like everyone's like yelling at us. Why are you doing this? Why are you here? You know, do you not remember like people that walk away from God's, you know, works? Like, you know, they'll get God's judgment will come on them. It's like, you know, you're going to get cancer again and you're going to die if you like stay at it, if you like leave God's place.
But it was too late. Matthew had already gone to the police, and he was eventually granted a grand jury investigation to determine whether criminal charges should be brought. Typically, these types of proceedings are secret, and the accused should have like no knowledge of it, but somehow the word of the grand jury got out to Jane Whaley.
They like found out that I had gone before a grand jury, which is supposed to be like a secret proceeding, but somehow they knew. And then they like showed up the next day and were like, we want to meet with these people too. And, you know, they're like, we have witnesses that can say that otherwise to what Matthew's saying.
They had Matthew's mother and his brother, Maddie, testify against him.
But anyway, yeah, they had all these people that I cared for like come in, but yeah, my mom especially came in and was like supposed to testify against me, saying, yeah, he's lying. Like I have firsthand knowledge to know that, you know, what he's saying isn't true.
Maybe the most shocking thing about this whole situation is that the 5 ministers charged with this crime have been awaiting trial for almost 5 years now. It's been one delay after another. The trials are currently being held up until the FBI and the SBI finish their investigation. It wasn't easy getting to this point. Remember, if this were a football game, the church is up by a lot, and the feds and state prosecutors have yet to put points on the board. Only recently have 3 church members pled guilty for an unemployment scam. How have they dodged so many accusations? Well, is it because they're innocent? Or is it because Jane Whaley is running all the plays with the local law enforcement?
Originally, they came out and interviewed Matthew. And Joey Sisk at the time was the detective. And he was really adamant that, you know, he was going to do this. And he was shut down. And whenever Matthew asked him why, he said the DA said no. And the sheriff said no. I can't do anything they tell me not to do, period.
This is a secret recording of Matthew talking to the detectives on the case. He wants to know why more serious charges aren't being filed.
I've just been doing my research and all, and pretty much what that means is we're only going to be able to get misdemeanor for what they did, correct? Okay. So, the DA, I met with the DA last week. Right. He read over your statement. Okay. And read over Patrick's. And he said the only thing he was willing to prosecute was misdemeanors anyway. Okay, so basically what he's willing to do, so if I'm understanding correctly, he's willing just to look at assault by strangulation, hold me against my will, and say that's just a misdemeanor and just overlook it. That's what he's telling me. But I just don't understand why he's willing to overlook my civil rights to be protected, both for a hate crime, for assault by strangulation, which is a felony, all these like higher up criminal felonies that they've committed. I literally thought I was going to die that night, and he's willing just to say, oh, this is just a misdemeanor assault. That's what he's telling me. It's just, I don't know. I'm not going to be like these other people that they're basing their decisions off to just ignore this because they, sucker out of it. These people need to be punished for what they've done, and it makes me sick that they're willing to just overlook my civil rights and just say, forget this.
So Matthew decided he was going to take matters into his own hands. If authorities weren't going to pursue criminal charges, well, Matthew will find a way to press charges himself. Here's Nancy Burnett.
Matthew, John Huddle, we all always went together because going by yourself up there is just not a smart thing to do. So we would go, in a pack, and we showed up, and I had already told them all, we're not leaving today without this report. So we went across the street to the DA's office first, and they made us wait 45 minutes. I guess they thought we would leave, and I was like, we're not leaving, sister. He's going to see us today. When the DA came in, he was, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a report.
The DA says that he can't help them without a proper incident report.
Do you need a report to take action? Yep, need a report. I was like, oh, okay. All right. So if we bring you a report, you're going to do something. Absolutely. Okay. We would never been given a report before. I said, we're going across the street. So we walked right across the street. It's about as far from here as the building over there, maybe 20 or 30 feet from where we are. I don't know.
Matthew Fenner and his supporters were able to find the one officer who didn't seem influenced or intimidated by the church. His name was Wayne Guffey. He happened to be the sergeant on duty that day.
They let us through the door, walk around the corner, and there was Wayne Guffey. Matthew sat down. He started to tell him what was going on. And he said, not Matthew said, not I said, not anybody else said, he classified this as a felony case, assault by strangulation, kidnapping.
After years of waiting, they finally got a new incident report, this time with some serious charges attached to it.
We walked in and we left there with a report that day. We asked for a copy of it. We took it right back across the street and said, here's your report. And when he saw us having the report made, all the wind was just out of his body. He was like, oh my God, they've done it. Matthew Fenner waited years before we got his report done. He kept saying, go to the magistrate. The magistrate would say, go to the sheriff. The sheriff would say, go. It was just back and forth constantly. And I've never experienced anything like it in my life.
Michael Davis, a former Rutherford County investigator, told the AP that this investigation should have taken months. He said they should have interviewed the witnesses. They should have gone to the church. They should have written a report and sent it over to the sheriff. He said that never happened. They just wanted this case to go away, and they never expected Fenner to push so hard. What they didn't realize was that Matthew Fenner was not backing down. Plus, he had the help of Nancy Burnett and his friends. So why would the district attorney at the time delay this investigation? This is Nancy Burnett again.
Brad Greenway was the district attorney there, and he sabotaged cases intentionally.
This is the same district attorney who's accused of giving Jane a heads up that a grand jury investigation was coming. But now, there's a felony on his desk. He just can't ignore it now. Eventually, the new DA, Ted Bell, called for a new grand jury and was able to indict Brooke Covington and the other church ministers. And while the state is preparing to take the church to court, ex-members say that Jane and her leaders were busy preparing for trial too. Remember I told you that Jane's son-in-law was an assistant district attorney at a nearby county? Yeah, well, his name is Frank Webster, and another assistant district attorney who's also a Word of Faith member were accused of holding mock trials for 4 ministers accused of beating Matthew Fenner. So why is this a problem? Well, because providing legal advice and participating in a mock trial is illegal and can be considered obstruction of justice. Former member Rachel Bryant told the AP that one of the assistant DAs sat in for Matthew Fenner during the mock trial. Then Jane told everyone to stand where they were that night. Rachel said, "Some would point to his head and say, 'I put my hand on him right here.' Then Jane would start screaming, 'No, no, no, you did not do that. Your hand was not on his head.' One by one, they reenacted what occurred that night. Frank Webster and the other assistant DA, both Word of Faith members, resigned their positions as prosecutors, and currently the FBI is looking into the matter. The trial against Brooke Covington and the other ministers is expected to resume sometime soon, but I'm not holding my breath.
In this economy, let's not let big wireless and your overpriced phone bill suck the joy out of the holiday seasons. Because right now, all of Mint Mobile's unlimited plans are 50% off. You can get 3, 6, or 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. They say it's their best deal of the year. Oh, and don't worry, you can bring your phone and your number over to Mint. There's no contracts, no nonsense. I recently started using Mint Mobile and I was super impressed by the signal that I get at my house. What a concept, right? For a long time, the only way I could make a call at home was with Wi-Fi. And now with Mint Mobile, I get a signal. Plus, it's a lot more affordable. So turn your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint Unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/pretend. That's mintmobile.com/pretend. Limited time offer, upfront payments of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plans. Plan required, $15 a month equivalent. Taxes and fees extras. Initial plan term only. Greater than 35 gigabytes. May slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com.
So now I'm bringing this season to a close. This season I've been talking about the Word of Faith Fellowship and Jane Whaley. But that's not what this season is about. There's an even stronger undercurrent to what is happening here. This season is about a small town in North Carolina where the local government has failed its people. The people here can't trust government to do its job, and if something horrible like this happens, no one can accept it because there's so much perception of corruption. Now, I'm not saying that the police and the sheriff and the DA and the state investigators aren't doing their jobs properly. I'm just saying that even if they were, the public doesn't trust them. Think about it this way. We wouldn't know anything about the Word of Faith Fellowship and all its allegations if the government seriously looked into matters. If secret grand jury investigations weren't leaked to Jane Whaley, if the DA took Matthew Fenner's case seriously and treated it as a hate crime, if dozens of child abuse cases weren't wiped clean because the church made some deal with the Department of Social Services, if the U.S. Attorney's Office would have taken action with the dozens of Brazilians accusing the church of forced labor and human trafficking. In order for government to work, there has to be trust. So when something horrible like this happens, how are we supposed to get closure? The church is slipping. Right now, 5 of its ministers are facing trial. Sure, it's taken 5 years to actually start the trial, but at least it's moving. And 3 of the Word of Faith Fellowship members have pled guilty to unemployment scams. Even Jane Whaley herself was named in one of the court documents. And there's even signs that her influence with local politicians is falling apart. Here's a secret recording of a prominent North Carolina politician talking about the church.
So I think I've been there 2 or 3 times just for special events, and I hate it. I hate going down there. It's a 3-hour ordeal. They'll take you and they sit you on the front row, and they have somebody with you all the time. And so you can't just get up and go to the bathroom and wander down the hallways. That's not the way that works. That's your first clue that there's something strange here. When you get out of your car, there's somebody standing there waiting to guide you and be with you. Sit you on the front row. You have dedicated seats. Sit you on the front row. And then they do this. They'll do like a kid's singing for you, and it busts your eardrums. You're sitting on the front row, and the kids are screaming when they're singing. And it is torture. I made my daughter go with me one time. She was pissed. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean,
what are they afraid of? I don't understand what they're so afraid of. What's this? All this.
If you're not doing anything wrong, you shouldn't be afraid of stuff. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
So I know. I don't know this for sure, but I have a great feeling that they're probably guilty of what they've been charged of. I would assume that would be it. It's and I'll tell you and again, I won't want this out for public consumption. Is we've kicked around, how do we get these folks out of the party? I mean, because we're concerned about it.
Yeah.
And the best, I hate to say it, but the best way to do it is we may start serving beer and wine at every executive committee we have, so they won't come. Bad when you got to go.
Yeah, well, you're going to get a lot of Democrats showing up then.
All right, that was part 10 and 11 of my series, The Prophet, Season 3 of Pretend. Now, let me tell you what happened since we first aired these episodes. After 8 years of delays, District Attorney Ted Bell has finally scheduled a retrial for December 8th and 12th of 2025. But here's the problem. Matthew Fenner is now in his final months of medical school. And on December 11th, right in the middle of the trial, he had a critical interview for a medical residency at a prestigious institution. And this interview could determine his entire career. Matthew says that he notified DA Ted Bell about this conflict. And despite the fact that Ted Bell has granted years of continuance and accommodation for the Word of Faith defendants, I'm talking about vacations, medical issues, travel, personal matters, Ted Bell refuses to reschedule the trial for Matthew Fenner. So on December 1st, 2025, Matthew Fenner filed an extraordinary legal petition in Rutherford County Superior Court. He's asking the court to remove Ted Bell from the DA's office, or at minimum, remove him from Matthew's case, and appoint a new independent prosecutor. The petition cites 3 grounds for removal. First, willful misconduct in office. He says that Ted Bell has refused to try the case for 8 years, despite a court order to immediately retry the case. Matthew says that for 8 years, Ted Bell has failed to consult Matthew Fenner, ignored his request for information, and violated Matthew's rights under the North Carolina Crime Victims' Right Act. Third, Matthew says that the timing of this whole thing is really suspicious because after 8 years delay, the trial is now starting during an election season where he says that Word of Faith's 700 plus members typically vote together as a block, and in a county like Rutherford County, that's enough votes to swing a local election and decide who becomes the DA. Matthew also says that he has been under a gag order for 8 years because Ted Bell never retried the case. So that means Matthew can't speak about it, witnesses can't talk about it, and the Word of Faith and the DA's office are protected from public scrutiny. Matthew also says that some Word of Faith members have approached him multiple times, asking him to drop the case. And when he immediately informed DA Bell about it, Bell did nothing. And in fact, according to Matthew's sworn statement, Ted Bell himself asked Matthew on multiple occasions to drop the charges. Matthew says that he has provided Ted Bell with names of additional witnesses who could corroborate what happened to him, and Ted Bell has never contacted them. Matthew also says that he gave him information about critical evidence, but Bell never followed up. Now, this is an unprecedented move, all right? What Matthew's trying to do here is pretty extraordinary because since North Carolina's DA removal statute was enacted in 1973, it's only been used successfully 3 times to remove a district attorney. 3 times. So removing a DA is extremely rare. The statute requires a judge to review Matthew's affidavit within 30 days to determine two things. First, the facts, if true, and are these removable offenses? And second, whether there's probable cause to believe that the allegations are true. If both criteria are met, the judge can suspend Ted Bell and order a formal public hearing where evidence would be presented and Ted Bell would have the opportunity to defend himself. Ted Bell has put out a statement about this. He says that he would rather this play out in the courts than in the public or the media. So we don't know yet whether the court will grant Matthew's petition, if the trial will proceed as scheduled, or if Ted Bell will step aside. But if anything new happens in this case, don't you worry, because I will follow up. Next time on Pretend, we are fast approaching the holidays and it's time for real life Grinches. And I just received the body cam footage for one of the cases that we're going to talk about, and it is wild. I'd never seen anything like it. That's next time on Pretend.